The civilized world is shocked once again by Jihad in Manchester, England against the young fans of Ariana Grande. The suspect responsible this time, according to police, is 22-year-old Salman Abedi. And without releasing details, police say this jihadist was known to them, which is becoming a fairly common statement these days when it comes to jihad. But my next guest points out something very, very interesting about Islam that a lot of us may not know. Muhammad and Islam's great classical jurists sanctioned the jihad murder of children. And we would love to get more on this from Dr. Andrew Bostom. He is an Islamic law scholar and the author of The Legacy of Jihad and the Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism. And so good to have you here, Dr. Bostom. How are you?
Good. Well, as good as can be under the circumstances. It's just another round of carnage. We're supposed to, as the European leaders and some of our own leaders tell us, we're supposed to just get used to it, I guess.
Yes, I just saw something from a BBC anchor who was making that very remark. We just have to get used to terror. We have to get used to it. Same with Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, who said that previously. But tell us a little bit about this. I saw this when you put this up on social media, that there actually is justification in Islam for the jihad murder of children. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, so if you look at the sources that Muslims find most authoritative, obviously the Quran itself, but also the traditions of Muhammad. And these are collected in traditions called the Hadith collection. They're supposed to be his spoken words, even sometimes his gestures, etc. But allegedly, Muhammad was describing an attack which involved, shooting catapults, and the victims were attacked at night, and they were, of course, non-Muslims, and women and children were killed. And he was asked about this because allegedly, at least in terms of Muslims fighting each other, you're not supposed to kill children or women or the infirm, etc. And his reply allegedly is, they are of them, meaning they are non-Muslims, and that was interpreted as meaning they are in this way as the parents, their non-Muslim parents, where you can with a certain degree of impunity on the basis of their being Muslim. But then the jurists expanded this whole concept much more broad into the doctrine of jihad, and that's what I also included, which is the idea that, doing jihad attacks on infidels, since allegedly they're supposed to have been warned about protecting themselves by converting to Islam, submitting to Islamic law, that once the attacks begin, again, if there are women and children in the way of the jihadist hordes, then they too can be butchered. So this has long been a concept. And I'm talking now about butchery, not just the typical enslavement, etc. So when you look at the Muslims' campaigns, certainly as chronicled by the victims, by whether they're Christian victims or Jewish victims or Hindu and animist victims, I mean, they were accompanied by mass slaughter. Now that's not particularly unique to Islam, but what might be somewhat unique is the religious imperative given to it.
Yes, that is. And when you look at what ISIS is doing with its own children, I don't know why anybody would really be particularly shocked. I mean, they're teaching their children how to behead human beings and how to put on their suicide bombing equipment and all the rest. I mean, they clearly don't have the same regard for children that the West assumes everybody has.
Yeah, and also I guess what part of why I'm so depressed is our presidents who I voted for, trip to Saudi Arabia, where the practice of beheading is a routine part of their faith when it comes to executing people for crimes that don't even exist outside of Islamic law, like apostasy, converting, daring to Christianity. It's very depressing, Janet, to see that we really have not gotten out of this cycle of kowtowing to Islamic despotism and Islamic despots, as a means somehow of stemming the tide of Islamization. And that's actually a fairly straightforward thing to do. There should be a moratorium overall on Muslim immigration. There's no question any longer about what it begets. It begets all the turmoil and terrorism that we're seeing in Europe. I'm sorry if people are uncomfortable with that fact, but it is a fact. This is what's going on, and I think just as during the Cold War period, we had a long period of a more general immigration pause, but some of it clearly was targeting areas of the world that were producing communists, including many people who are at least nominally of my faith. I'm Jewish. Yeah. But in retrospect, it was perfectly legitimate thing to do because unfortunately, so many certainly secular Jews were attracted to the horrible cult of communism. It wasn't just confined to Jews. But parts of the world that were breeding totalitarian ideologies, whether they were communism, whether they were Nazism, we had a moratorium on immigration from those areas. And of course, there was a period of just trying to integrate the people that had come primarily from Europe. But this isn't working. Whatever this experiment has been since 1964, and certainly more recently, including significant Muslim immigration into Europe and into the United States, it's just not working. It's just not working. And what you're seeing, there's a direct association. Look, this jihadist butcher yesterday was the offspring of Libyan refugees, allegedly, who were allegedly escaping persecution from Gaddafi. But he was born in Britain. And so it's just, I think there's going to be no end to this. And in fact, but unfortunately, I really don't see the will to come to terms with what Islamic immigration means in the end.
No, I don't either. I think multiculturalism and political correctness are so ingrained in so many people that you dare not speak what you just said. But exactly, people don't want to say what the truth is. This is also so important. Theresa May was speaking out today, and she vowed to defeat the ideology that often fuels this violence, which is such a laugh to me because she is the same woman who banned people like Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller from Britain simply because they wanted to come over and commemorate the slaughter of Lee Rigby, which, by the way, occurred on the same day, on the anniversary. So this woman does not get it. She's equating Islamophobia with anti-Semitism and everything else. It's as if she cannot differentiate.
Yeah, well, that's really a horror. I would give you something that's more asymptomatic of what we're really talking about. It seems only marginally related, but to me it's strongly related. There was a horrible incident in Florida, I believe it was in Tampa, where a neo-Nazi converted to Islam and shortly thereafter killed two of his neo-Nazi roommates because they were mocking his conversion.
Right.
So there you see the convergence of these totalitarian ideologies, I think, in a rather stark way. That there's a lot of fluidity between Islam, Nazism, communism. Two are atheistic ideologies, and one is allegedly religious. Although I would argue it's primarily political. It's primarily a political creed, which aims, like the other two ideologies, for domination. And again, people don't want to see that either. I was actually very impressed with Geert Wilders' comments the other day. He was visiting and accepting an award in California. And he was quite aware of what Trump had just said in Saudi Arabia, again, about the idea of an evil ideology. And Wilders said, with all due respect to President Trump, he's in the cradle of that evil ideology. And the ideology is itself Islam. And so I think this is very important. And it takes a leader of Wilders' clarity and also his education. He's thoroughly educated. That's the other thing that's missing, Janet, is our leaders are not educating themselves about Islam. They just aren't.
Right. Right. Well, they want to seem fair to everybody. They don't want to be Islamophobic. That's what it's all about, is not being Islamophobic. And it's interesting because I did watch that video, too, of Geert Wilders and some of the comments that he made after that whole thing. What do you make of President Trump referring to the jihad and the jihadists, I should say, and no doubt his accessories to the crime, calling them evil losers? How does that strike you?
Again, it smacks of the same sort of foolishness, obfuscation, if it was deliberate. The second special evildoers, and you know, it's a way to make this sort of generic and detach it from its deep religious roots, and I think it's done deliberately. And when the tragedy of Trump is that you could see. And I don't think this was a facade. I think during the campaign, when he was just being himself, he had certain gut instincts which were correct. He said that infamous interview right before the debates in Florida, where he says to Anderson Cooper, "Islam hates us." He felt it. He felt it. He also said in his own lumbering, kind of way, at one point previously, he I think this might have been from a year or two before he actually read, where he was interviewed, and he said, quote, "The Quran has a really bad vibe." Now, you can make fun of that, and you can say how crude it is, but again, it tells you that there was something in his gut that was correct.
He absolutely knew what he was saying. Yeah, you're totally right. Well, Dr. Andrew Bostom, thank you so much, Dr. Bostom.